Ever since I bought myself a Steam Deck, hacked my 2DS, don't tell Nintendo, and started collecting retro handhelds, I've come to the realization that I don't really like modern games all that much anymore. At first, I thought about dropping the hobby altogether. I wasn't really having fun anymore, which was strange because I was still genuinely hyped for new game releases. After hearing every gaming journalist repeat the same glowing reviews almost word for word, I'd rush out and buy these new games at launch and repeat my own patterns. I'd play it for a good while and even enjoy it, but every single time, I'd make it halfway through and for one reason or another, I'd get distracted, and next thing I know, it's a month later and I'm replaying a game I've already beaten 1,000 times instead of what I just paid $60 for. I'd have to tell myself, like, you better go back and force yourself to finish that game. So I'd boot it up and damn it, I forgot how to play and I don't remember where I'm at in the story. I might as well just start a new game. I cannot tell you how many times I've done this, just to make it halfway through again and then drop it again. It's the definition of insanity. Have you ever sat there for 15 minutes straight with brain fog, scrolling through your backlog, and you seamlessly transition to scrolling through your phone without realizing it? Well, that's what I did one night until I stumbled across this channel on YouTube. It was this guy named Russ, and he was reviewing this game device that looked like a tiny Nintendo Switch. It was called a Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. And he was showing off this thing emulating Game Boy Advance and PSP games. And I remembered how much I loved games like Jazz Jackrabbit on the GBA and that Daxter game on PSP. It looked so easy to set up too, and you could just have thousands of games that you could take with you in your pocket. 12-year-old me would have killed to have something like this back in the day. I was fully on board. I ordered this thing and I checked my tracking number every single day until it arrived. And if only you could have seen my face when I opened that box. It was love at first sight. I didn't touch my Nintendo Switch for months. I dumped hundreds of hours into this thing. And since then, I bought myself a Steam Deck OLED, a 2DS XL, and various different retro handhelds, and it's crazy to think that less than a couple years back, I was ready to quit gaming for good. What's even more bizarre is that I'm uploading videos on YouTube and having discussions with you guys about games, and never in a million years did I think I'd be doing something as random as this. So with that lengthy introduction out of the way, this is everything I miss about older games. Now, I didn't grow up with Contra on the NES, but I've always heard the legends of the Konami code, which was basically a requirement to play the game back then. This is something that I don't really see a lot of in modern gaming, and I really wish it would come back because not only did cheat codes let you break the games and it made for some really goofy and funny moments, I think being able to turn on things like infinite health or let you one-hit kill everything, it gave you a real sense of ownership with your games because you weren't completely bound to the intended experience. My first introduction to cheat codes, and you can argue that they weren't really cheat codes, but to me they were, was passwords on the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. This was before game saves were basically universal for every game, so I would have to keep a notebook and write down the passwords in order to keep my progress. The most notable game for me in this regard was Mega Man X. I remember finding and using passwords to give myself all the power-ups, and I even gave myself the secret Hadouken ability from Street Fighter. There were codes for all the health upgrades, codes for all the armor pieces. I mean, to me, those were cheat codes. I even remember having a Game Shark cartridge for my Game Boy Advance later on. But if you would have came to our house during the early 2000s, you would have heard me and my cousins speaking cheat codes like it was a second language. If you want to impress one of your friends during a Grand Theft Auto gameplay session back then, just put in that jetpack cheat code you have memorized or the flying cars one. I used to love doing goofy shit like the super jump or the mega punch. You would literally hear us yelling codes at each other from the next room over. Yo, quick, I need weapons. R1, R2, L1, R2, left down, right up, left down, right up. Now it feels like play to win has been replaced with pay to win. Now, instead of entering a code on your controller, it's more like entering a code on your credit card. Does anybody remember when you didn't have to pay for shit? Like, I remember when I didn't have to pay for Unlockables. You would literally just play the game and get cool shit for playing the game. When I think of Unlockables, I think of the costumes in Spider-Man for the PlayStation 1. All that cool shit you can unlock in the crypt from Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. Just cool shit like cosmetics and concept art, stuff like that. Slowly filling out your roster in your favorite fighting game. It's the reason why I beat Resident Evil 4 over and over and over again. One of the coolest power fantasies ever is beating the game for the first time and then getting your hands on the unlimited rocket launcher. I even remember going through the game with Leon dressed up as a gangster with a Chicago typewriter. It was the coolest shit ever. I still remember getting that cool-ass golden sword in Ninja Gaiden Black for collecting all the golden scarabs. It was the equivalent of swinging around Cloud's Buster Sword. That's how awesome this thing was. And how could I forget upgrading the wooden sword to the unlabored flawlessness? These days, instead of earning a cool reward like that and feeling accomplished, the entire cool factor is just ruined because you're just able to purchase it with real money. It's gotten so bad. I used to see a game that had microtransactions and I would just play the game and ignore them. But now it's like, nah, when I see this, I just avoid these games altogether now. I really miss the days when you would buy a disc and that entire game was on the disc. Now I don't even know how it feels to collect physical discs anymore because I bought the Series S, which is an all-digital console. Yeah, sure, I have a few physical cartridges that I bought for my Nintendo Switch, but as far as just popping that disc in and going straight to playing it like I used to with the PlayStation 2 and the GameCube, instead I have to strategically figure out what games I'm gonna uninstall and which ones I'm gonna keep to make room for another game I might want to play, and it's like I spend more time downloading games than actually playing them. If you want to have a small handful of digital games on this console, you basically have to have no less than a 1 terabyte SSD. I thought I'd be happy having things like Game Pass because it would mean I'd get to have more games to play, but honestly, I just miss having that physical piece of media in my hands. Reading the back of the box, flipping through the pages in the manual, just the satisfying sound of opening and closing the game case. Even the sound of my disc tray on the PS2 is nostalgic to me. I mean, I don't miss my PlayStation 2 scratching the hell out of my 10th copy of Midnight Club 3 and having to take it to GameStop to get the disc buffed. But I would choose that over what we have now in a heartbeat because I could do whatever the hell I wanted with that game. Now I don't even know if I want to own games anymore. A lot of what's coming out feels bloated, formulaic, and manipulative. To the point I'm actually glad I don't buy this garbage anymore. Remember in the beginning when I said I would quit a game midway through and I would find myself replaying an old game that I've already beaten before? Well, that's because those games were actually replayable. They were games that came to an end. I miss when games were shorter. I miss when games were more simple. I miss when games had gimmicks and the whole gameplay loop was centered around using those gimmicks in unique ways. It's probably why I feel so strongly about Nintendo, both in positive and negative ways. You can trash talk games like Skyward Sword as much as you want for having weird motion controls and questionable pacing. but I had infinitely more fun with it than climbing towers and clearing out outposts for 50 plus hours in Assassin's Creed, which is an open world game design that needs to die and never come back. That's why I'm so happy that I can emulate all these older games. Games preservation might not mean anything to you or to these companies, but for people like me, these older games are like a time capsule. I'm not just reliving my childhood. Sometimes it feels like when you're cleaning out the attic and you stumble across an old family scrapbook and you start flipping through the pages and remembering all the good times. Which is kinda true for gaming. I played a lot of these games with my family. Playing Need for Speed Underground in split screen, fighting each other in Dragon Ball Z Budokai, trying to beat Halo 3 together on Legendary difficulty. Even the single player games we would play together, just passing the controller back and forth. Now that I'm older and family visits are way too far in between because we're all busy just trying to keep up with bills, I end up playing these games to escape. Something I find harder and harder to do as these games start to get more complex and more realistic, which I know makes no sense when you think of the immersion factor, but it's true. As these games try to be more realistic, the more it emphasizes to me that they're not real. If I wanted realism, I'd walk outside and go touch grass. When I play these games, I'm not just some nobody stressed out about bills and buying groceries, everyday shit. I'm one-man army Leon Kennedy on a mission to save the president's daughter. I'm your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man swinging through the streets of New York, and I swear to God, Timmy, you better not lose that goddamn balloon again. Or I'm Isaac Clarke, a space engineer sent to investigate a distress signal on the USG Ishimura. And yeah, I get that feeling with indie games a lot because they're actually made by people who are passionate and actually play video games. And sometimes games like Elden Ring in the AAA space surprise me. But these moments are too far in between compared to what I think is the golden age of video games. I'm really hoping that in the future we see that spark of creativity that used to flow through the veins of the gaming industry. But until then, I'll be sitting here just playing more retro games. This is everything I miss about older games. And once again, I appreciate you hanging out with me this far into the video. And I hope you can share with me what you miss about older games down in the comment section. I really appreciate all these discussions we've been having.